Some business leaders in Omaha worry a bill in the legislature could do long-term economic damage to the state.
LB 574 would limit gender-affirming care options to transgender youth. Producer Roger Hamer talked to some business leaders about their concerns.
One of the challenges we have had for a good deal of time is being able to attract and retain enough qualified workforce to meet the needs of business.
That challenge is potentially being made greater, according to Omaha businessman Alan Fredrickson. He says a letter drafted to Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen and other legislators outlines how the implementation of LB 574 could severely impact Nebraska businesses in recruiting and retaining young qualified workers. Fredrickson says nearly 80 Nebraska businesses have signed the letter so far.
I believe legislation like this presents a barrier to make it harder. It's already difficult enough. This workforce issue extends well beyond Nebraska. It's a national issue. And one of the things that I believe is important for us to do is to have an environment and a reputation of being welcoming, loving, belonging, and inclusive.
The Omaha Chamber of Commerce is also concerned about the bill's long-term ramifications, that young people will leave the state or not relocate to Nebraska to work, and that businesses will suffer. In a statement, the Chamber's leaders write, "We want our state to remain a great place that is supportive and inclusive, with a focus on creating the best environment to do business and live. And we want the entire country to know that Nebraska is, in fact, for everyone." Fredrickson echoes the Chamber's sentiment.
So that people who are here feel like they are wanted, heard, and respected. And for people who are considering coming here, they have those same feelings and impressions about our state.
Fredrickson says it's an issue that impacts all generations across the state, but wonders if the bill's supporters have considered the impact on Nebraska's workforce in the future.
Have they deeply thought about what this does? To me, there's so many more impactful and positive policy decisions they could be working on. To me, it has no business upside that I'm able to see, but it does have what I think is fairly significant consequences.
Roger Hamer, WOWT 6 News.
And a spokesman with the Omaha Chamber of Commerce tells us he's heard some state senators are reconsidering their votes on LB 574. The bill has already passed 2 readings in the legislature.